Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Kevy Eats World. In today's episode, we're going to be making Italian gravy and meatballs, my absolute favorite. I married an Italian woman who actually taught me how to make this recipe, and I fell in absolute love with Italian cooking. You know, I say in my next life, if I can come back, I want to come back as an Italian grandmother. So we're going to do step by step. We're going to make some brajol, we're going to make meatballs, and then we're going to just go through the process of building the gravy. So now that we have all the ingredients in, the key is not to over mix the meat. You just want to gently, just gently mixing everything in together. But you really don't want to overwork the meat, too much. And then really here is just finding the balance between the breadcrumb to egg ratio. You want your meatballs to be a little wet, a little soft, but you don't want them to be too moist to fall apart during cooking. But you also don't want them to have too much breadcrumbs, because no one wants a bread ball. You want a meatball. Now that the meatballs are rolled, we'll put them in a 425 degree oven for about a total of, maybe 15, 16 minutes. We'll do 8 minutes on one side, and then we'll flip them. You want to get a decent crust on either side. I typically like to do them in the oven, then put them in the sauce afterwards. We could still use some of the drippings from the sheet pan and put them in the sauce from a flavor perspective. But I think this just makes it a little bit easier to do the meatballs, and then you can kind of put the meatballs in the fridge for a little while your gravy's cooking. You can do the meatballs later. Timing is really dependent on what you want to do and your personal preferences. Okay. All right, now that we have the meatballs working in the oven, we'll work on some beef brajol. Really all you need is top round, parsley, some pecorino romano, and some garlic with a little bit of breadcrumb, and you'll really make a really nice addition to a nice deep flavor in the gravy. Now that we have the meat nice and pounded out, nice and thin, we'll go ahead and start creating the brajol. Super easy process. You'll just take your thinned out meat. I don't like to season the inside of it because the seasoning, it's already well seasoned from a filling perspective. But we'll season the outside once we wrap them. So we'll go ahead and just do just a thin layer of the mixture. If you're like me, just be as messy as you want through the process. Simple, rolling of the meat and the filling, and we'll go ahead and wrap these, and we'll have some brajols ready for the gravy. All right, so now that the brajol is rolled and wrapped, the meatballs are done. We can start doing my favorite part, which is browning meat to start building a lot of flavor in the gravy. So really what you'll want to brown in the pot is some brajol. I get pork breast with the bone on, but you could do any sort of pork product. I've done pork neck bones, I've done pork ribs. Sometimes it's just a pork loin. Really, I just do whatever's on sale. The pork cooked down for hours and gravy is going to taste super delicious. And then some sort of sausage, whether you make it your own or buy it from the local butcher. The key obviously is going to be you're going to want to season all the meat very generously so it can build a nice crust as you start to sear it. And then the key is going to be when you sear things, don't crowd the pan. Let the meat brown. If you need to have a dish on the side so that you can take the meat out as you are building your flavors. And then once all the meat's really seared, we'll throw in some aromatics. Just get them translucent and fragrant. And then we'll start throwing in deglazing with some, if you have leftover wine from the night before you didn't finish the bottle, some bone broth, and then the San Marzan tomatoes, and then really just let that thing cook down for hours. You can throw the meatballs in right away. I typically like to wait, closer to halfway through the process to put the meatballs in. I just think it comes out to be, a better meatball, but whatever you want to do is totally fine. Really, the key to this, though, is browning of the meat. That's where all your flavor is going to come from. So don't rush that process, and then, have fun with it, for sure. So at this point, we're finishing off the pork breast bones. We're going to throw some brajol in here as well. Get that going. Really nice crust building on the bottom of the pan here. And it smells absolutely fucking delicious. now all the meat is browned. We have a really beautiful crust layer of crust flavor on the bottom of the pan. Now we're just going to put down the aromatics, deglaze the pan, put in them San Marzano tomatoes and some of the bone broth, and then we're going to go ahead and finish this. Something I do like to do, I do like to take the pan off the heat a little bit, because you don't want to burn the onions and garlic, because that's just a really tough flavor, and to do all this work to really essentially lose your flavor at the beginning of it. So I just kind of take it off the pan a little bit, let it cool down a little bit. Obviously you need some heat to cook. Then we'll throw a little bit of olive oil in here, just for the aromatics. Just for me, I like onion in my gravy. My wife likes it too, so she's the Italian one. So we just really listen to whatever she wants to do. We'll get the aromatics in there. You want to make sure you salt and pepper every single layer in cooking. That's really the important part of building flavor. The salt really draws the moisture and the flavor out of the aromatics, and just really adds a nice touch. Cooking on medium heat here. Really just want to make sure we bring these down just a little translucent. We're really just trying to sweat off a little bit of the flavor here, but we're not trying to brown them or burn them. And if you need to take them off the heat a little bit, you just kind of watch it as you go through this. And we'll start going through this stuff pretty quickly here, as we get through it. And some of this crust is starting to come off a little bit. When we deglaze this, this will get really beautiful flavor out of it. One thing I also like to do, you don't have to, but I like to put a little bit of tomato paste. The important thing with tomato paste, this is probably about like a fifth of it, maybe like two tablespoons worth. But you have to make sure you cook that tomato paste down. So I like to do this as I'm sweating through the onions. You want to brown the tomato paste a little bit, but again, you don't want to burn anything as you're going through here. That'll take about a minute or two to cook down, and then we'll start getting into it. All right, so the tomato paste pretty much cooked down here. As you can see, some really beautiful color in the pan here. I'm going to turn the heat up in the pan a little bit. Just take a little bit of leftover wine. Just enough to deglaze. I don't like putting a ton of wine in gravy. I think it just gives too much of an acidic flavor, but if you like wine in it, however you want to customize it. But really, you just want to really scrape all the bits off the bottom of the pan. Really building beautiful flavor here. I like bone broth. Chicken bone broth to me has a ton of flavor. You can use beef stock, but I think this just has more hearty flavor than beef stock. You can put as much or as little bit of this bone broth in here as you want. I'll probably pour about half of that in there. And then the key, as my wife tells me, with the San Marzano, you have to squeeze by hand. I don't know why you can't chop it up beforehand, but this is the Italian way of doing it. As my wife's staring at me right now. The key to the San Marzano is to try to make as much of a mess as possible, just to piss your wife off. I think that's definitely a part of the recipe. All right, we're pretty much done here. The next key Italian trick is when you're done with your cans, you want to put a little bit of water in the cans. That'll help give a little bit of extra of the stuff out of the can, but also give you enough liquid so that you can really have enough opportunity to build down the sauce. And then the last step is all that meat we seared. You just want to go ahead and throw that in. A lot of this is meant to be flavor. Some of the pork pieces, you really want them to braise in that liquid over time. And the meatballs, again, you can throw them in now, or you can throw them in at the end. And we'll let this go probably for about 3 hours. We'll throw the meatballs in another 2-3 hours, and we're gonna eat some fucking gravy. So the gravy's been going for about 5.5 hours now. It's really starting to tighten up towards the end here. Probably about, I think, another 30 minutes or so. We'll add some Parmesan and we'll be ready to munja. If you want a nice little Italian trick, always keep a little bit of bread by the gravy so you can taste as you go along. Getting there. Alright guys, so the gravy's done. We just made a little bit of pasta. Just Borelli pasta, just lots of salt in a pot for about 10 minutes. Super easy. And now we're going to finish and eat. So really, just play a little bit of pasta. However much you like. It's probably a good portion for me. My wife probably needs a little bit. Half of that. And then the last thing we're going to do is just add a little bit of Parmesan to the gravy. Oh, that looks so good. My wife always tells me just add more cheese. When in doubt. Stir this up a little bit. The cheese will also help thicken the sauce up a little bit. The key to gravy is just don't rush it. Depending on how much liquid you add, you might just need to let it go longer. And then really just pick the pieces that you want. So definitely want a meatball. And I've been craving some of this Peugeot, for sure. And the last step is just finishing off with the beautiful gravy that we made. And then a little top of some Parmesan Reggiano. Enjoy.